Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Mock It Like It's Hot. As you can see, I am not Evan Bushman, our normal host of the show. I am Joshua Hudson, and with me is arguably the greatest co-host in the game right now, Mr. Ryan Weisse at the Fantasy.
Oh, I thought you were going to pitch Kelly before you even pitched me because she's the best.
Well, no, this is why I said co-host. Now, Kelly and I are pod buddies. This is now the second podcast we've been on in the last week or so, and I'm absolutely loving it. And decked out in green today to celebrate Masters Week, Mrs. Kelly Singh at Kelly in Phoenix on Twitter. How we doing this morning, Kelly?
I'm doing okay. Yes, I am here.
Yes, we see this. I love it. I know you're dealing with some allergy issues, and somebody who is allergic to literally everything, I feel your pain right now. It's not the best thing in the world, but we will power through. And today we're doing, what is it, Ryan? A Dynasty startup, one quarterback, full PPR mock draft?
Full PPR, 12 teams this time, because as we talked about last week, if you're doing a 10-team Dynasty, and again, for the love of God, do not league shame people. Whatever you have fun, have fun. But in a 10-team, quarterbacks would have almost no value if you don't go to quarterback. In a 12-team, it kind of even things out a little bit because you start to see a fall off after the top 12 to 15 quarterbacks anyway. So yeah,
we'll definitely see some zigs when others zag. And why am I the only one on screen? There we go.
I'll figure it out.
I'm like, Kelly's the star of this whole thing. What are we doing here?
Buttons are hard.
Kelly, do you have any quick thoughts on Dynasty startups, the format, everything before Ryan hits the start draft and we get this thing rolling?
Just basically, last year was my first year doing a Dynasty league, and it was a startup. So the best advice I have for anybody who's new to Dynasty, make sure you're reading through the league rules and understanding how rookie picks are handled, because that's a big deal too. My first year, I just gave away like my spots, and people were giving me picks for 22 and 23. And I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. Then my first year, last year, was not a great year for me. I didn't contend, but now I'm actually in really good shape going into the next 2 years. So I guess accidentally, but the point is read the rules, understand our kickers use as placeholders, etc. There's a lot of wonky rules out there, and just make sure you understand them.
So a quick run through of the settings of this. Obviously, we mentioned the one quarterback full PPR, but the way the roster is constructed, it's one quarterback, 2 starting running backs, 3 starting wide receivers, 1 starting tight end, and 3 wide receiver, running back, tight end, flex spots.
I always like 10 starters. It's just such a good number for me. So I went with 10 starters. And then we are only doing 15 rounds, but that's because we really want the show to end in an hour or less. In a normal Dynasty, you would go 25 to sometimes even 30 rounds. So we are only drafting about 2/3 of our roster here.
All right, so, and I'm going to give a quick shout out to Miss Lindellians at 105, because I'm sorry that we don't have defenses and kickers, so please don't leave this startup draft right now. All right, let's stick this out and have some fun, all right? And with that, Ryan, let's get her done.
We got people up at ends in the chat. They want this thing moving, so.
All right, we're moving. All right, so, yes.
Josh starts off with a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm here's the thing in Dynasty, for me anyway. Okay. I understand in most drafts, running backs are always going to be king, especially early. And here we go. We're starting with 2 wide receivers. So this is kind of going into my thought process here. Wide receivers in Dynasty, to me, have the most value. Like when you're getting to a point where you are in contention and maybe you're weak at running back, running backs tend to be easier to trade for. So I would much rather stockpile the talent at wide receiver and use any additional draft picks to then trade for said running back. Because you're always going to have teams that are at the bottom that have good running backs that as they hit a certain age threshold, they're going to be more likely to want to bail on them to get as much value as possible. If you're acquiring running backs in a deal for a running back, you're not exactly moving forward in that instance.
Unless for some reason someone's giving you a better running back for a worse running back, and then make that deal.
Fair enough. All right. So with Jefferson and Chase coming off, followed up with Taylor and Harris. This seems pretty par for the course at this point. Kelly, where obviously you're sitting here at 112, I believe. So what's going to be kind of your thought process going into the tail end of this draft? Because you're going to come up with back-to-back picks here. Look at this. Linda's already on auto pick. Come on, girl.
And she's in the draft. She has the green dot next to her name.
My thought process. Right now, what I want to do, I don't want to give my whole strategy.
Yeah, Josh,
to
man.
me.
Gotta put her on the spot. We're gonna have some fun here.
I'm gonna pick the best 2 available players for my team.
I love it.
The vagueness. All right, well, let's go this far. All
Okay,
right,
wait. No, I want to. Let's just put a pin in this really quick because I believe I picked a wide receiver in the first round last time and got like raked over the coals. But Josh is like, yeah, let's just smooth this over.
Was that the Dynasty draft? Well, in a 2 QB Dynasty, yes, I would have given you a hard time about wide receiver in the first round.
I'm pretty sure it was a wide receiver in the first
I mean,
round.
I just give people a hard time. If you don't draft the exact same way I draft, you're doing it wrong. No, I'm joking.
Now I'm thinking maybe it was JT, but either way, it was like,
Well, no.
why did you do that? And I'm like, because I
was going to say,
wanted
though, as we all know, Kelly is my nemesis from episode 1 because, which is changing in this show, not the nemesis part. Me and Kelly are going to fight all the time, but how we're doing the show. But anyway, I picked the team that I thought needs the most improvement in the draft. And I gave Kelly a hard time mainly because of bench depth, where she had really great top of her lineup, but then her flexes and her wide receiver 3 were rough. So I know I was picking on you in that draft, but I still said you had the best pick of the draft because you like stole Antonio Gibson, if I remember correctly. But I will say in a 2 QB league, I am of the mindset. Oh, thank you. I am of the mindset in a 2 QB league, you can't go anywhere. I'm gonna run out of time, aren't I? No. You can't go anywhere but quarterback in the first round if you're playing to absolutely win immediately. So I do have trouble with that, at least in the first 6-7 picks. Towards the back end, and I don't remember where you were, Kelly, you probably do. I can see going elsewhere. I'm very interested that Kira went Javonte Williams. I almost took him, but I didn't know if it was too early for that. So
it's never too early to get your guy.
Greatest fantasy football advice. There are no lies detected.
Very true. So as Kelly works on her back-to-back picks here, I want to bring up this question from Albert in the chat. Where do y'all usually draft quarterbacks in this format? Now, again, we've stated early that this is a 1 quarterback league. I mean, you're still going to have your elite guys, the Josh Allens, the Herberts, the Patrick Mahomes of Joe Burrows in this space. So what round realistically are we looking at? All right, this is where I might stay. You know what? I'm going to get one of the elite guys and be set for the next 5 to 10 years, or even in 12 team, just wait it out and cycle through, draft rookies in the 2nd, 3rd round, etc. And Ryan, we'll start there.
So
Ryan's waiting to roast me. I'm waiting for it.
This is why I wanted to kick it to him first, and then I'll let you go, Kelly, and then we'll bounce to getting your guy here with.
Well, what's funny is she opened the door because I had a plan here as well, and I don't care how much older he is. Give me my guy Kelsey in the 2nd round. So the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs. So first and foremost for me, I've always been QB late, but in these dynasties, you have to be careful with that because it's not redraft where you're going to live the stream necessarily. There's something to be said about starting to look quarterback in the mid 4th, 5th, 6th round, especially if young guys like Josh Allen or Joe Burrow start to fall, because in a dynasty league, that's your quarterback you play dynasty in 3-year windows, but that's probably your quarterback for the next 5 years. easily if you're not making trades in a single QB dynasty, and you're done there. Other than bye weeks where there will probably be at least one guy on waivers. Davis Mills was a favorite to go snag last year for some bye week fill-in. You're going to start this guy every game for the next 3 years as long as he doesn't get hurt. And there's a little bit, and it's a lot like why Kelly grabbed Mark Andrews, who I do believe is the dynasty tight end 1, and I grabbed Travis Kelce. There's something to be said about not having to worry about a position, knowing that you're starting this guy for the next year or two with no questions whatsoever, and that position is done for you, and you have nothing to be worried about. In redraft, it changes a little bit because you don't care who your quarterback is week to week. But in a dynasty, there's something to be said in looking in rounds 4 through 6. And that's actually, it's a great question by Albert because it's something I'm very much wondering how this draft is going to play out. I don't play in a lot of single QB dynasties. And so that's something I want to see how it shakes out because I'm going to be perfectly honest. I was considering taking Josh Allen with my first or second pick just to be done with quarterback.
Kelly.
That makes sense.
I'm not going to roast you at all for Mark Andrews, by the way. If you can give me a 26?
This is my reasoning is being that I have 2 picks in a row and I'm at the end. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he would make it back to me through the 3rd round. So when I'm on the front end, I would have probably done running back, wide receiver, and then the next one probably would have been a running back or a wide receiver, and then my tight end on the 2nd pick. So it would have been the 4th round.
Yeah.
This is one thing that I'm seeing here kind of between the first 2 rounds. So again, we start early with the young wide receivers, Jefferson, Chase. Then you get this long running back run. Javonte Williams goes at 110 to Kira. You've got... And then, kind of ending the first round with really, really good wide receivers, but maybe a little further up there in age. Guys like Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. Wrapping back in the 2nd round, you see more wide receivers going than the running backs off the board, including our first rookie, Breece Hall, going at 205 to... Wow, Chris, you really went Deontay Johnson
right before you had to pick. I was wondering. Man. I was going to let you know it's your turn to pick and that you've already been.
That is just absolutely stone cold and hurts my soul. Okay, so let me finish this up really quick.
Yes, and it's actually an interesting point you bring up where the aging wide receivers, I think, are going to cause the biggest debate in Dynasty. And Kelly actually took a guy who mentally I have been wrestling with what to do and how to handle Stephon Diggs. So, Kelly, I'd love to hear you talk about him. In full PPR, I still adore Stephon Diggs, but like every year we're hearing, Buffalo's going to finally go get a second wide receiver. Buffalo's going to do this. Diggs is 29, 28 years old. It's not like he's old by any stretch, and he's tied to arguably the QB1 in Dynasty. So is it me just having a mental block? I know he had some down points last season. Like I'm struggling with how to handle Stephon Diggs. So is he just flat out still a top 5 wide receiver to you? Because that's what you drafted him as.
Yes. And you just talked yourself into it.
I did.
So I'm not exactly sure why you're struggling because of those very same reasons. He's not ancient yet. He is a top wide receiver. He is tied to arguably the best quarterback in the league. So I don't see an issue with taking Diggs as my first wide receiver, especially with so many, or maybe all, arguably, again, all of the best running backs off the board. I certainly don't want to lose out on getting an elite wide receiver in a 3 where I need 3 wide receivers. So
I think it's a great call. Yeah. A few weeks ago when we were doing our first half PPR, I was talking myself into Diggs falling to the back end of the wide receiver ones. And then I went back and looked, and honestly, I felt stupid even saying it. I'm like, this dude is a top 10 wide receiver no matter what. And I don't think the format even matters. And I'm a guy who, like, I traded for Stephon Diggs in the Dynasty League I got into with Josh, and he walked me right into a championship. So I have no bones to pick with Stephon Diggs. I think, honestly, it's the idle hands of the offseason where it just has me wanting to hate a guy who I have literally no reason to dislike.
Yeah. And I think it's also looking at who is available, who is taken. and the fact that we need to play 3 wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're already slim pickings right now.
And not to mention, if in a full PPR, we have the ability to play 6 wide receivers.
That's true. Exactly. But I will be the first to say that I like to play multiple tight ends in this kind of format. I'm throwing out there. Hopefully that doesn't
Is she
end up
foreshadowing her next pick,
I'm
maybe?
foreshadowing, perhaps.
I want to bring this up really quick as we're kind of getting into the second half of the third round here. So we have our first team that's gone 3 running backs. Mm-hmm. Fantasy Austin, who actually is one of the newest writers with Club Fantasy. Hopefully we'll get some new content out from Austin here in the next couple weeks. But you've got 3 guys: McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry. Not exactly the youngest bunch here. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on starting, first off, running backs this early in a dynasty startup, and especially some that aren't exactly the youngest at the position. And Kelly, I'll start with you.
Well, I think, again, this is probably just draft capital. I don't need to say again, meaning that we're looking at who's available. Austin's right in the middle, so a lot of those great picks are already taken, the Taylors, the Harrises. So it's probably the same reasoning I had, where he's like, okay, who's the best? Who can I trade off of their name also for that later draft capital? I'm not putting words together very good, but you know what I mean. These are like fantastic all-star names. You got King Henry, Mixon's tearing it up. McCaffrey still has his CMC brand where people are going to be interested. So I like this in the sense that it's going to, at least if he can't trade them off, they're going to still compete for this year. Maybe he's just a 1-year winner, or he's going to be able to trade them for somebody younger, or maybe even at the end of the season, if he's already contending or has it locked up, there's still an opportunity to trade off some of these guys to somebody who potentially could be contending and not lose your spot.
And that's exactly what I was going to hit on, is you get to decide relatively quickly. You need to know, Kelly talked earlier in the show about knowing your league settings. You need to know your trade deadline, because you have a chance with the team. Austin is clearly going into this with a team he's going to try to build to win right now. If week 6 rolls around and you're 1-5, 2-4, you need to start shopping those running backs, because you're not in win now mode, and you need to go at teams. I try to pick on teams that are on the fringe of making the playoffs. So a 3-3 or a 4-2 team, not necessarily the guys in first place, because you're hoping that you trade them these great players and then they still miss the playoffs so that their draft picks are better draft picks for you. Last year, I was rooting so hard against friend of the show, Drew Metcalf, one of our writers in one of our leagues, because I needed him to miss the playoffs to get me his pick into a lottery for having a chance at a high pick, but he made the damn playoffs. So you find yourself rooting against your friends who you aren't even playing. I was firmly in the playoffs, but I needed Drew to miss the playoffs. So it adds an entire element where you start trying to pick the teams who still want this player, but might give you a pick that's entirely too good.
Real quick, Kelly, you're on the clock. I know you were kind of
I was taking a photo of myself on the screen because I was telling them where I was.
Oh my goodness.
There's a golf draft.
You have Patrick Mahomes now.
First world problems right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Hold on.
Well, I was going to pick Josh Allen, but can I not have Patrick Mahomes, please?
Boom. Hurry up and make your pick.
There we go.
Okay. My turn.
The beauty of orchestrating your own mock draft. Here we go. Do-over for Kelly. I love it.
Okay. So
Got it. All right. I like it. We're going with the stack here with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Okay.
I was going to pick Josh Allen to stack with Diggs, but I'll take the next best thing and stack Jackson with Andrews. And then let's go.
I broke the clock, though.
I'm going to get creative again and put another tight end, because I'm going to play him in my flex position, and I will not be drafting any more tight ends the rest of this draft.
We got a nice little bully tight end strategy going
That's
there.
right.
I'm kind of digging this. Okay.
When I'm on the first or the last, when I have that double pick, or even if I've traded with somebody and I have a double pick in the middle, I will always try and get an additional elite tight end in that instance. It's like a free pick to me.
Okay.
It's an and when you're looking at these guys, Andrews is 26, Kittle is 28. If this works in a 12-team league where all we do is talk about how bad the tight end position is, Kelly has nothing to be worried about, and she's influencing the draft because I don't know that Kira would have went Hockenson normally there. But Hockenson is widely looked at in Dynasty as basically the last relevant tight end. And so you're now forcing other people to do things they might not have did. And what that does is, if you just look at the domino effect, that probably opens, because Kelly's obviously got no running backs and one wide receiver right now. But what it does is it knocks the dominoes down that because Kira went tight end here, that might be another wide receiver or running back who's available for Kelly, even though her pick is so far away. So it's a good strategy in a 12-team dynasty, because if there are 5 relevant tight ends and you have 2 of them, now you only have 3 teams you're really competing against.
My favorite comment from Miss Lindellians. Bully tight end in this economy. I love it.
On what day is today? Monday? On Mondays,
Yes.
we wear green.
I love it.
See, and even Kira, exactly what Ryan was just talking about. Forcing her to take that tight end when maybe she didn't want to. So it's all about strategy at that point, And we have the ability with all of these additional flex spots that you can play that second tight end, and you don't have to feel like you're sacrificing playing someone else at another position, because this isn't a 1 flex or 2 flex, it's 3 flexes.
Well, what I love about you guys doing this show, or even just the sense of more people broadcasting their drafts, or just being more open about their drafts and their draft strategy, is kind of what Ryan said at the beginning. There really isn't one right way to do it, but had this happened like in a silo, it's almost like when you sit down at a blackjack table and people get pissed at the hand that you play because you ruined the next hand. So that's one reason I don't play blackjack, to be honest.
Yeah, people are.
But it's basically the same thing, except you're able to explain why you did it and how it's going to work out for you. And that opens up people's minds to different types of draft strategies.
Yeah, along those notes, I just want to give a shout out. We tweet about them every week. The Fantasy Whisperer started this whole Mock Draft Monday thing, and they will claim they didn't start it, but Josh and I will always give them credit. And they've had basically all of our writers at some point have been on the show. And it's one of my favorite things, exactly for what Kelly just said, is you get to explain to people what your thought process is. You get to ask people what their thought process was, and you get to try different things out. Last week, and I didn't even do it right. Last week, I tried to not build around a team to win, and I waited forever on running backs, and I still ended up with really good wide receivers. But one thing we don't do in these is in startup mocks, there's a ton of trades. Like Kelly brought up, you can lose your first round pick of the future year and not realize you're losing it because of how weird the picks go, or you can be trading one of your best players, the first pick in the third round, for a first round next year, which is probably not worth it. So knowing how that's being handled with us, we just have rookies just straight up incorporated into this draft, and there are no trades. But you really get to learn. And Dynasty, as much as the fantasy community has grown to accept Dynasty, the overbearing limits of NFL or fantasy players, they don't play Dynasty, and it is intimidating. This is a team where I'm drafting this team and it's my team for life. And you can look at it that way, but that's not exactly what it is. This is your team for right now, and you get to determine if you're going to win. Like Austin, he has, Patrick Mahomes and 3 great running backs, but then you can trade those guys away. Dynasty encourages trades. So if you play in a league where you're constantly complaining about your league mates not doing trades, get into some fun Dynasty leagues. You have to trade, because that's all you can really do. And then I clearly pissed Kelly off, so she has just left.
No, she's working with some not so great Wi-Fi. So
yeah,
I'm
she warned us
assuming
out of the show.
That probably had something to do with it. But as we wait on Kelly to come back, so I just went back-to-back running backs here at 412 and 501. And I kind of want to bring this up because I feel like when we're talking about running backs in not just fantasy, but also in Dynasty, Saquon Barkley has become quite the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
He falls to me here at the 412. And obviously I'm not the biggest Saquon fan, but RB18 just feels really low, especially from a Dynasty perspective. And I guess, I mean, Ryan, well, I'll pose this. Like, do you think there's still trade value with Barkley? Do you think there's a sense that he could, pop back into, that upper echelon of running backs that, we've seen him play in the past?
So I don't know about the trade value. I feel like he's persona non grata right now, especially you can see this in startup drafts that he's falling as much as he is. But I think there's win now value. I don't know that he's ever going to play to rookie year standards again. However, you have the right coach in place to make this a successful team. But let's also remember Buffalo running backs didn't catch a ton of balls. And that was the wonderful value that Saquon presented as a rookie. I think it was over 100 targets. I think he caught 77 balls or something like that his rookie year. That was why that in the touchdown scoring. And then we talked about this in previous shows. The Giants just don't seem to score touchdowns anymore. So he's a great for a team looking to win now. I don't know that he has the trade value right now. He just seems to be a guy that fantasy managers are avoiding across the board. And there's another name. And it's funny because you got Saquon, I think you said at RB18, 2 running backs before that. David Montgomery was a solid running back last year. He's 24 years old, but he keeps falling to like the 4th and 5th round, even in a single QB league. And that's just very strange to me. Like fantasy managers don't seem to want him. And it's a new coaching staff. What you have to assume is going to be an improved offense. David Montgomery should be a guy you're looking to get. And he just fell into Joe's lap, where Joe, who would normally start a draft, as you and I both know, Josh, with 3 running backs, he gambled and took a wide receiver specifically to snipe me, I'm pretty sure. And then he still has these running backs falling in his lap later on. So it worked out really well for him.
Yeah. I mean, 4 of his first 5 picks here have been running backs, following up Montgomery with the rookie Kenneth Walker. Kelly, I know you kind of popped out. Is Wi-Fi working okay? Or are we good here now? Maybe, potentially.
I got the notice that the Wi-Fi had been fixed in my neighborhood, and clearly it was not. So I'm on my hotspot now. I think I'm doing okay.
Fair enough. All right, so we've got, let's see, 5 quarterbacks now like off the board.
Oh.
No, it froze up on us again. Maybe.
It's okay.
It's going to be fun. All right. So Joe Burrow coming off, Ryan, get little thoughts here, because I know you're notoriously not a QB early guy.
Yep. It just goes back to exactly what I was saying. I am looking at the young quarterbacks. I have growing concerns about Kyler Murray. Love the guy, have dynasty teams built around everything that he was doing out there in Arizona. But we talked about this. Kelly did a wonderful article in this on all the diva attitude of NFL players when it comes to their contracts. Don't quite like the way he's handling his contract renegotiation. Joe has talked me into hating everything about Cliff Kingsbury, so we don't know when that coach is going to change. So Kyler Murray was kind of the last good young quarterback available outside of Joe Burrow. I love everything they're doing in Cincinnati. I think they're going to run away with that division, and they're starting to look like they're almost a lock for the AFC Championship at this point. So if I can get a young quarterback tied to a young offense, they're building up that offensive line. I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback for at least the next 2 to 3 years. And he's the last one I can look at this board and know is going to be there. So while I would normally wait until double-digit rounds, and as I showed you guys in the first episode, I'll sometimes forget to draft a quarterback. In this, being able to have Burrow for the rest of his life, I'm going to jump on that.
So Kelly here with her back-to-back picks, and I know that she inevitably broke both Ryan and Kira's hearts with the Jerry Jeudy selection here.
He was going to come back to the next pick.
I'm actually surprised that Kira took Cooper over Jerry Jeudy, if I'm being honest here. But you finally took your first running back, Kelly, in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's another running back that I feel like is getting the vitriol from the fantasy football community. Tell me how confident you are relying on CEH as your RB1 here in this Dynasty startup.
Not super confident, but I think he's young and Mahomes is throwing to him. So those are pluses. And, KC's being kind of picked apart right now. So I think it's a good opportunity for him to break out, like really break out this year. So it's kind of where I'm going. I'm playing a little gambling move there. Jerry Jeudy, I was all in on last season. And now this year, I'm on. So I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah, I'm obviously way on board with that because we've talked about this. We don't know the offense that Denver's going to run, but I think it lines up well with the offense we've seen in Green Bay. And I think Russell Wilson has way more in common with Aaron Rodgers than we've really looked at in his career, especially now that he's not doing a ton of running. And I mean, he's probably doesn't lie about vaccinations. But anyway, in that offense, I think we're going to see a situation where Jeudy fits, and I'm not saying he's as good as this guy, but Jeudy fits the Devonta Adams role better than Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton perfectly fits the MVS role, but obviously we would hope does it way better. I think you're going to see Jeudy as the target hog in that offense, and I think it's going to work out really great, especially for Kelly in this situation, getting him where she did.
I will not tolerate Cortland Sutton slander on this episode as I guest host in place of Evan. A lot of a lot of wide receivers coming off the board here. Yeah. Some veterans mixed with some
young guys. Has started.
The run has absolutely started. And our friend Clinton Holmgren said, screw that. I'm taking my quarterback with Dak Prescott. So another couple quarterbacks coming here, both with some rushing value. Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott here in the 6th round. Ryan, I want to get your thoughts here because you went with Michael Thomas, and obviously we know he hasn't played much over the last couple of years, the ankle injury, transitioning to, away from Drew Brees. Why him over some of these other young guys that are still producing?
So I definitely was looking hard at Amon-Ra St. Brown, and drafting with Joe next to Joe, I didn't realize how much I hate that, but man, do I hate that. I think we've just been yelling at each other the entire time with snipes. So with Michael Thomas, he's the only proven guy left on the entire board who can be the wide receiver 1. I understand we haven't seen it in 2 seasons, but 3 years ago, he was record breaking. He was Cooper Kupp before Cooper Kupp was Cooper Kupp. I don't care about his route tree. I don't care about any of that. You have 2 quarterbacks, Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton, who know how to get the ball to their wide receiver 1. So I don't care which one of them is the quarterback. They're going to run a similar offense to what they ran last year. They just need a wide receiver 1, and hopefully he's ready to make amends, be a New Orleans Saint, and comes back on the field, and I landed him as my 4th wide receiver. He's only 29 years old, so I'm not overly concerned about what the future holds. But to get a guy who is a proven overall wide receiver 1 in the 6th round feels like a steal to me, whereas in fantasy right now, people would say he looks like a reach. So,
Kelly, any follow-up thoughts on Thomas over some of these younger guys like St. Brown, your boy Marquise Brown, Mooney, and Ayuk?
Marquise is not my boy. I'm frozen. Okay. Marquise Brown, I have like a huge problem with, and I don't know why. I'm just bitter because he makes these amazing, great long bomb catches, but then can't seem to catch anything else or catch things when it really matters. So it's like he gets all these yards and points and how great he is, but yet he misses the most critical catches in the game. So, I mean, they had him catching like soccer balls during the season. That's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, he needs to try to catch wiffle balls.
Yeah,
because then if he can catch something smaller than a football, catching a football should be a cakewalk at that point. So I want to address this Jeudy Sutton because now Linda's in the chat here, and apparently we're fighting. So quick little backdrop. Crocs are not shoes. They're just the worst thing in the world. So Linda, I'm sorry that you love Crocs. I sold these stupid things for 10 plus years. They're the worst things in the world. Second, it's always and forever Sutton over Jerry Jeudy. Sorry, it is what it is. And Joe, yes, I know I went Hunter Renfrow. Suck it. That's all I gotta say.
We've definitely formed a bit of a hive mind at Club Fantasy. So,
yep. And you know what? It's okay because we're all still willing to go against takes with each other. But I think there's definitely a mutual respect that, you're going to be good and you're going to be bad. I'm okay with it. And Joe taking Brandon Cooks here, that was also somebody that I was looking at instead of Hunter Renfrow. I think he's perennially undervalued. There's a chance that he could very well end up getting traded, like some of these guys that we've discussed throughout this draft. And again, what is this, the 7th round now? Like, that feels like stupid good value for Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. And when he becomes a Kansas City Chief, the world's going to explode for him. So.
Absolutely.
So I made it back. Apparently my internet now is back. I'm making a pick.
Sweet. Because you're on the clock with back-to-back, so that works perfect. Miles Sanders. Okay.
Oh, Kelly, you're the worst. Oh, damn it.
All right, Ryan, let's hear the reaction here. You're the worst. Were you that high on Miles Sanders getting ready to come back to you?
This late in the draft, absolutely. I thought this was all going to work perfectly in my favor, that I have punted on running back this entire time to go get these damn wide receivers, and you have 24-year-old Miles Sanders just sitting there. Yes, he's allergic to the end zone, but I think it's going to be a great year for him, and I already have my touchdown scorer, and James Conner, and then Kira goes Leonard Fournette, who was my consolation prize, and Kelly snipes me. It's not the way the draft was supposed to go.
I mean, we were just talking about a hive mind, Ryan. I feel like you should have known this with 2 contributors at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, it was rough.
Draft in front of you.
But we could also be like, this is a great lesson, everyone. I feel like Ryan is on tilt. He's freaking out, and he's just going to grab things. So
she's probably right, because I probably should not have even went running back there. I don't even particularly care for Damian Harris, but I had my damn screen on running back. So this is actually a great lesson, because I would have went back to the wide receiver well if I was not on tilt and completely screwed over by Kelly. So congrats. My team's awful.
Yeah, I mean, and you're getting to the point here in your dynasty startups where you're starting to see a lot of rookies that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
They haven't landed on teams yet. So we don't obviously we know the talent that comes with them, but there's a lot to be said about landing spot. And on our Wednesday show where we're starting all of our Stars of Tomorrow previews, we're getting into how we start looking at rookies, especially in dynasty startups and heading into dynasty or the rookie mock drafts and such. And if you're a novice to dynasty and you're seeing a lot of these players that you don't know, it almost becomes like you're on tilt in a way, because you're seeing somebody that, who the hell is this guy? Let me go ahead and I'll take this person who probably wouldn't go for another 2 or 3 rounds. But then you go back and you're looking at your team in May or June, and you're like, well, maybe I should have taken this guy, because they ended up with 2nd round draft capital and they landed on, say, the Packers, and they've got Aaron Rodgers for the next 3 years. And now they have a lot more insulated value. So this is kind of getting into that portion of the draft where you got to start paying attention to a lot of these outside factors, and you can't be scared or afraid really to take some of these rookies that maybe you don't know a ton about in terms of landing spot, but the talent is there.
And most of my rookie drafts end up happening after the NFL draft, but there's a guy who you basically just described, Josh, without even meaning to describe him. Amari Rogers last year, when he was first drafted, everybody was like, oh my goodness, they finally went out and got Aaron Rodgers, another weapon. He's going to play great alongside Devontae Adams. He was nothing. I mean, Amari Rogers, I fell in love with Amari Rogers while watching Trevor Lawrence tape. So I thought he was going to be great. So I really love that landing spot. And I got him in a bunch of rookie drafts. He did nothing. And so coming into the offseason, I was very disappointed. Didn't know if he was even going to make my final roster as we started doing rookie cutdowns and things like that. But then they trade Devontae Adams. And it's like, okay, now I'm back on this Amari Rogers freight train because we don't know what's going to happen there. Allen Lazard hasn't proven anything. Randall Cobb is going to turn into dust any given day. Amari Rogers could end up being the wide receiver 1 on this team. And now I feel like I won a lottery last year by drafting a guy who I only really knew from watching Trevor Lawrence tape. So
fair point. All right. So more quarterbacks coming off. Let's kind of do this small little exercise. I'm going to kind of jump to the end. We'll call it like a little preview here. Ryan, what are some picks that you're seeing that you like so far, and some that are making you scratch your head a little bit?
So I really like, honestly, the strategy everybody is going in with this. And then I try not to pick because like B Murphy right now is on auto draft. So his last couple of picks, I don't even know that he was the one that made, but the one that is definitely a head scratcher and definitely a preview of the end of the show, I'm thinking right now, is Drake London in the 4th. I don't know. I think he's the first rookie taken at that point. You're taking Drake London with Keenan Allen, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm not even getting into the rookie names yet. Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, still on the board. And then there are arguments, is Drake London even the first rookie wide receiver that should be drafted? So him going there, and I don't think it was an auto pick, that's definitely a head scratcher to me. But then to come back and get Ezekiel Elliott, who is a top 10 running back in the very next round, is a great pick for him because his team didn't have any running backs at that point. But when you go back to the early picks, I actually love the way the draft started. There's no debate over who the best 2 young wide receivers are in fantasy right now. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, first picks of the board. And then there's very little debate over the top 2 fantasy running backs in Dynasty with Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris. Those are the first 4 picks. I love when you see sharp drafts like that. Dalvin Cook was an auto pick. I'd love to know, and Linda, if you're in the chat, I'd love to know if you would have went McCaffrey or if you would have went wide receiver, because McCaffrey seems to be the wild card in Dynasty right now. And then Breece Hall is an interesting one because we've talked about this for 2 weeks now. He has that Jonathan Taylor comp, but is he Jonathan Taylor and we don't even know his landing spot? And then the last name I want to bring up is Derrick Henry falling all the way to the 3rd round. Derrick Henry was on damn near a record pace last year in those 8 games. He was still the RB10 after he had missed like 5 games or something like that. And you're able to get him that late in the draft. So those are the picks, the way the running backs are shaking out 100% are what's been very interesting to me in this. And I like how it's all shaking out. And Linda just said she would have taken Cooper Kupp, which obviously would have screwed my entire draft up. So kudos to auto picking. And how did she put it? The bitch had something to do or something like that.
I like how she asks for a redo. I mean, we gave Kelly one. I feel like we should give her one. Ryan, we're swapping picks here.
I was going to say, are we trading Cooper Kupp for Dalvin Cook? We'll talk after the draft, Linda. I'll throw in a kicker.
I will, kind of on your Derrick Henry topic, I'm a little surprised that Nick Chubb fell to the 3rd round. I feel like there are a lot of people that, kind of rate him in that like top 7 to 9 running back range, even though he doesn't offer the same PPR value. But because of his ability at running the football and racking up touchdowns, he's viewed in that upper echelon because it's not going anywhere, or at least that's the idea. So, him kind of falling behind a lot of these other pass catchers, some of the younger guys like Akers and Gibson and Hall, I feel like that was insane value there in the 3rd round for Casey. Kelly, before you get into your back-to-back picks here, I want to kind of ask you the same question. What were some? Well, actually, let's go. Make your 2 picks here. We'll kind of fill this a little bit, and then I'll double back to you on the same question.
I would like to know if she was going to look at Kareem Hunt with her picks, because the auto draft kind of screwed me there, and I was kind of hoping he was going to make it back around. So
I was not. Okay. I'm really excited about this pick right here, because of the versatility and that he's listed both as a running back and a wide receiver. So I really like that pick. And then I'm going with youth and my guy, Rondale Moore.
I like that. And there's definitely some vacated targets with Christian Kirk moving on. and AJ
Yeah.
Green yet to be signed.
There's been tons of local coverage here about how Rondale Morris is going to play a larger role in this season, and that he has the talent and the ability. And I saw it at training camp last year. It was so exciting to watch him. I posted so many videos of just these little loops right to Rondale Moore, and he just tears it up. He's amazing. So I hope he gets that opportunity. So picks that really stood out to me. I liked seeing those tight ends come off the board early just because I am a fan of tight ends. And the top tight ends produce as many, if not more, points than some of our wide receivers. So that's something that stands out to me for sure. I am interested that there's not a whole lot of stacking going on these teams, which is something we typically see, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't really see a lot of that happening in this draft.
Might be the only stack, right?
I think so.
I did consider Joe Burrow. I think it was at the 501 when I took ETN, kind of on that kickback, because I did draft T. Higgins in the third.
Saving this is a really great team right here. I'm really excited about it.
I like that you brought up the tight ends, because between rounds 2 and 4, we had 6 tight ends go, and then we didn't have another one get drafted until Goddard at the 902.
I was gonna say, and that's a kudos to the whole draft. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, as of right now, I'm looking.
Schultz might.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, when I'm looking at the back end of the tight end picks, I think Schultz might be the most exciting out of all of them. I was a huge Freiermuth fan last season, but that's because I really feel like he and Ben had a lot of chemistry. And with Big Ben gone this year, I'm not quite sure what his future holds. But Schultz is super exciting to me. I'm off the Fant train. Last year, he was a huge letdown for me. But yeah, I like Schultz. And he's been going way early in a lot of the drafts that I've been seeing outside of this one.
I think it's interesting that you bring up, Noah Fant and kind of disappointing and obviously changing teams. His situation didn't change, though. I mean, if you really stop and think about it, he's still going to have the same quarterback in Seattle that he had in Denver. He had over 60 catches and 600 yards 2 of the last 3 seasons. Like, I mean, it really, those are mid-tier tight end numbers that you're looking at. It's just a matter of, can he take that next step to get into that elite conversation? And he definitely has the athletic profile to do so. Who knows what Seattle's going to do? They're finally back in the first round. They picked 9th overall. Maybe they could be looking at quarterback. Looks to be like they're set up for next year as well to potentially make a play for one of the quarterbacks in the 2023 class. But I think we all know that Drew Lock isn't it for Seattle. So then it just kind of becomes, where does he fit in with DK and Tyler Lockett?
And Seattle's obviously a popular guessing spot for Baker Mayfield. I read an article today that teams are still talking to the Browns, but it's a fight over how much of Baker's salary the Browns would be willing to pay. And then obviously you're just kind of playing chicken with the Browns because they almost have to cut him. So
I'm going to go for some young guys.
I don't want to make it like a tight end show, but I just feel like Fant, you said mid-tier numbers. I don't even know if they were mid-tier numbers. I had him on so many teams, and it was so disappointing. I don't even know on tight end premium leagues that I broke double digits even very many weeks. It was so disappointing.
Yeah, it was definitely a rough season, and we saw Alberto really start to come into his own, and I think that played a big part in the trade that happened. So it's an interesting dynamic because, like Josh brought up, the situation isn't all that different. It's just, if they trade DK Metcalf, does that make you like Fant any better because now he's not the third option in his own offense?
Yeah.
Or are you just done with him?
I'm just done with Fant. I can't put my chips in on maybe it's just a personal thing too, but one, we don't know what's happening with quarterback in Seattle. Two, he was such a disappointment last year. And once a player burns you like that, it's, do I go back to him? I feel the same way about, this is probably a weird correlation, but Robbie Anderson, as he comes up there in those mid-tier project perform. I don't know if I froze, but he does not perform at a mid-tier. He did not last season. And yet you look at projections again in the drafts, and it's shown Robin mid-tier.
Well, and it's very interesting. Robbie Anderson is the case study for not looking at end of year numbers, because Robbie Anderson's end of the year numbers typically come from 3 games he played the entire season, and then he's just a ghost for 13 games. So he's such an example of that, and it's such a really good point that because of his end of year numbers, he ends up looking like a mid-tier player. If you roster Robbie Anderson anywhere, you do not feel like you have a mid-tier player. You at no point, and I have Robbie Anderson in 2 or 3 leagues, I was a big believer. At no point did you ever feel comfortable starting him. And I always make the joke about guys like Robbie Anderson is that it's the worst roller coaster in the world, because they have that great week on your bench, and then you feel like you have to start them and they have a terrible week. And so you throw them back on your bench for 2 weeks. They have those great weeks, and it's just a disgusting player to have. So you have to hope there's some sucker in your league who's willing to take them off of your hands after a good week.
Why do they always have to be suckers, Ryan?
Because
for sure.
If they pay for Robbie Anderson, you're a sucker at this point. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. A couple of intriguing picks here that I want to bring up, especially here from Clinton at the 10th and 11th round. DJ Chark signing a 1-year deal here in Detroit. Obviously, we know the Calvin Ridley situation being suspended for 2022. What are our thoughts here? Obviously, I think Chark is a big lottery throw or dart throw going to a really crappy situation, but they need pass catchers. Ridley being the ultimate question mark, and especially when he does come back, that's going to be close to 2 years off. We're almost talking about Michael Thomas in a way with Ridley, where, limited production, misses a full year, and then is coming back at age 28, getting ready for what, hopefully will be a second contract for Ridley.
I think Clinton took him exactly where he was supposed to, because this is exactly where I was going to take him, and I almost took him over Zamir White in the last round. I was like, I think people are going to stay away from him, and I might be able to get him around at this turn, and I certainly did not. So I think it was a great time to take him, and I think you've made the perfect correlation, is that it's Michael Thomas, and it's so much Michael Thomas because we have no idea who his quarterback is going to be 2 years. We have no idea if his coach is still going to be there because coaches are on such short leashes. I'm willing to gamble on, and what a term to use, on Calvin Ridley this late in a draft to be able to hang on to him and see what he does in 2 years. And to be honest, I really should have taken him ahead of Zamir White. The more I look at my team, this is a team that is just going to ruin other people's seasons. It's not going to have a great season. And Ridley would have fit in with what I was building on a more of a 2023 team. And Zamir White doesn't do me any good. So that was a bad pick on my part. I really should have taken Ridley at that pick. So I think getting him here is exactly when he should be going.
Kelly building an absolute behemoth at the tight end position.
She did the right thing.
I know. I lied. Zach Ertz is going to have his year. He showed that he's on the right team at Arizona last year, and they're going to continue to feed him. He proved himself in all the key moments last season for the Cardinals. right place, right time for Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
Both
And he
on
just
my
announced
team
that,
and on the Cardinals.
yeah, and he just announced that he's having a baby. Him and his wife Julie are
I didn't see that.
So, congrats to Mr. and Mrs. Ertz. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Ertz, coming from Philly. So, love seeing him, and and I love this comment from Joe. I won't draft a tight end, Kelly. Oh, a tight end. Very well said. Very well said, Joe.
But she just landed 3 top 5 tight ends in a 12-team league. She has put the rest of the league in a very tough position for 2022 and honestly probably 2023 as well, because there's not a ton of up-and-coming talent at the position. We kind of talked about earlier, Goddard and Schultz probably should have went earlier, but everybody else and all these tight ends going before Zach Ertz, it was a great pick, Kelly.
Yeah, I think there's only one team that doesn't have a tight end. And that would be Mr. Joe over here.
Oh, he just took Hunter Henry. So
not that Joe, the other Joe.
Oh, different Joe.
The one that was commenting in the chat, Joe Pepper.
Oh yeah. Congrats on your fight, by the way, Joe.
Yeah, Tony Danza.
So let's look at, we've got about 3.5 rounds left to go. Just kind of looking at some of the available players still left. Who is kind of looking at, hey, why is this player still on the board here? And I know maybe we're giving away some draft strategies here, and I'm not saying this because I'm coming up on the clock and I'm getting ready to rock and roll here, but just kind of getting some initial thoughts. Like maybe it's a younger guy that you thought would go earlier, that maybe is being held down because draft capital is an issue, or it's a veteran that you think can still help people win. It's like people are just fading him because of the age. Ryan, I'll start with you there.
Melvin Gordon strikes me as one. He's a productive running back this late in the draft. Obviously, he doesn't have a team right now, so I think him not having a team is the main reason he hasn't been drafted. I honestly, I think it was Kira who took Javonte Williams, I would be looking to add Melvin Gordon this late in the draft, just as I think he does end up back in Denver. Well, way to go, Chris. And then the wide receivers, I'm finding that we're starting to see a lot of the hype dying down on guys like Laviska Shenault, Van Jefferson. These are guys who are younger and you would think it would have went earlier, but I think people are starting to come to the realization it's probably not going to happen for them. Same thing with a guy like Corey Davis. And then the one that I find interesting because I don't know how to feel about him. Josh, you and I have obviously done a transaction for him where I way overpaid. Mecole Hardman could be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City, and he's just sitting there in the 13th round. Good job, Chris. My goodness.
Literally
Chris.
Both players you just talked about. Kelly, is there anybody that stands out to you in this instance? I mean, we've seen kind of 3 guys here, Gordon, Hardman, and then Ronald Jones go that I feel like we're kind of in that category.
Yeah.
I mean, wide receivers still kind of deep.
If you didn't have a tight end at this point, you probably should be looking at Gronkowski at least to compete this year with Tom Brady. We're looking at veterans. Gus Edwards is going to still be a force next year on the Ravens. He'll be back. He's a favorite, and he is the bus for a reason. And then we have a young person who definitely made a lot of people's streaming days happy. Peoples-Jones, he was on waivers quite a bit, but then when you needed somebody, he came in clutch. He's still on the board there, which to me, I thought was a little bit surprising at this point with having so many wide receiver spots to fill. Being so young, and especially now he's this elite quarterback that makes me want to vomit. But outside of that,
I think somebody, and we mentioned tight ends, that is kind of going overlooked. Logan Thomas still being available, and that's a position that obviously is very hard to fill for fantasy teams. And again, coming off the injury. he could definitely be one of those late round dart throws that helps you win some games, this season, because Carson Wentz loves his tight ends. The offense is schemed to get the tight end a ton of targets. And again, you're seeing a lot of these guys come off the board. Brevin Jordan, Trey McBride. We talked a ton about Cole Kmet not having scored any touchdowns last year. Dawson Knox being just a touchdown guy. There's a lot of question marks amongst like even that group of like 4 tight ends that just went off the board, and someone like Logan Thomas is sitting there. So, all right, as we come across the 1 hour mark here, I think what we're ultimately going to do is kind of do this little segment where, quick takeaways from the draft, who likely wins, as we kind of finish out these last couple rounds, off air or as we're kind of wrapping things up. So
yeah,
we've talked a little bit here about, kind of thoughts on the draft. Ryan, I'm going to start with you here because I haven't really had much time to go through and figure out who quote unquote wins this draft. So Ryan, as you've kind of looked through this draft, what's a team that we'll call them the oops of the draft?
I'm really just looking at specific picks. I'm not even going to pick on an entire team. I think this may be the best draft we've done, and I think it's because everybody's starting. Mock draft, like anything else, it's practice. And so you have to improve, and people are starting to figure out the strategy, starting to figure out where players are going to go. And we have a lot of the same names with us every week. So very well done in this draft altogether. I'm going to go back to something I talked about earlier, and I'm going to just kind of pick on B. Murphy a little bit. And I'm going to go all the way back to the 4th round rather. I don't understand the Drake London pick whatsoever. And I know he's on auto. I don't know if he was on auto back then, but I don't think it would have autoed. That's my biggest kind of mistake I found in the draft. Everybody did really, really well. I don't even have a problem with Joe not taking a tight end because a guy like Gronkowski's still out there. So if he falls to him, it's still going to work out really well for him in a win now mode. But with Drake London, there are arguments that he is the best wide receiver in this draft. I don't know if that's the case. I love Garrett Wilson a lot, and I like Chris Olave. I'm following the speed guys, and Traylon Burks, if I don't mention him, Kira's going to come for me. So there are a lot of guys where Drake London is very debatable to be the best rookie wide receiver in this draft. We don't have a landing spot, and you're taking him over, let's just put it bluntly, the guy I got 2 picks later, Keenan Allen. If I'm trying to build a team, and his team is a win now team with Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, if you have Keenan Allen on that team instead of Drake London, it's very hard to not pick that team to be one of the best in this league. They have a little bit of an issue at running back. I think Garrett Wilson is when the auto pick started like chiming in. And then I don't know how I feel about James Robinson, but the biggest weird part of this draft to me is definitely the Drake London in the 4th round. I can't imagine, unless he somehow works his way up to being a top 5 pick, we look at any dynasty startup draft where Drake London is a 4th round pick.
So I'm going to kind of give some quick thoughts on one of my favorite teams that I've come across. And then, Kelly, I'm going to kind of give it to you to kind of wrap this up and talk about some of your favorite picks, least favorite picks here. I really like what Chris did from the 102.
Yeah.
Going chase over the running backs, again, and I mentioned this early, I like building my team around younger, ascending talent, but also young wide receivers. He starts off with 2 of my favorites, Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson. Broke my heart a little bit, taking 1 pick before me. But I think he did the right thing also, adding someone like DeAndre Hopkins, adding Allen Robinson, getting a dart throw in Mecole Hardman here at the wide receiver position, and not forcing the running back picks, taking Cam Akers' solid spot. Isaiah Spiller, I think some of these rookies are ultimately going to end up in timeshares. And I'm currently on the clock, so that's fantastic.
Yeah. I do want to give a shout out to Clint Holmgren. I picked on him a little bit last week about kind of building a team that was kind of stuck in the middle of win now or productive struggle. I feel like this week he knew exactly what he wanted to do coming into this. He walks away with my 2 favorite young running backs by far. Chris did him a favor. I'm not a huge Cam Akers guy. I know Chris is. Take a look at the logo. But to get Antonio Gibson in the 3rd round to pair with Jonathan Taylor, and then to get my guy Michael Carter in the 7th round after already building a great young wide receiver core, he got his quarterback in Dak Prescott. I love what Clinton did with this draft. If Pat Freiermuth hits, that's a great team as well.
So, Kelly, let's wrap this up. Give me some of your favorite picks and some of your least favorite picks.
Excuse me. I was just looking. I'm really interested in how Joe picked 4 rookies in the first 10 rounds. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm really just trying to learn from this. I don't know that I would have taken so many gambles in that first 10 rounds, but it could totally pay off for him if they all find starting landing spots or even just being part of the early depth chart for the next year or two. So I found that super interesting, not right or wrong. I think I really like Josh's team, mostly because of the Jefferson pick was really bold, and I wouldn't have taken Pitts, obviously, but he did. I think tight end in general was a good call, but not necessarily the right person. I think it's great. I actually love my team. I'm super stoked about it.
That's some serious tight end firepower on this team.
But even
I like
outside
the
of
strategy.
that, it's just like I feel like there were moves there that are not typical of me, and as I'm growing in my own skill level, I'm just feeling myself today, so I'm gonna go for it.
Love it.
When the more that you learn and the more confident you become, like I would have never talked about trades, but I was on a podcast the other night and gave a big trade spiel, and I felt good about it. And I even said in the middle of the podcast, oh my gosh, I feel really good about this. So if you are new to Dynasty and you look at your team and you're like, wow, I really did that, I think that's okay. Give yourself a pat on the back. Be proud of yourself. And then go out there and make some trades, which is not my favorite thing to do.
There you go. Fair enough. All right, so we've got three picks left here in the mock draft. I feel like throughout our sign off, we'll probably end up wrapping this up. So first off, Kelly, thank you for coming on with us. I know you've been battling some allergies and obviously some internet issues. I also feel that it was a nice redemption from the first episode where Ryan was none too kind to your overall team, but also very complimentary of some of your individual picks. So kudos and thank you for coming on despite all of that.
I'm a complicated guy. I'm a complicated fella.
Complicated indeed, but a fave for sure.
And I love the rookie talk, and then you end the draft with Kenny Pickett. Absolutely.
I actually was going to say that is it was my last pick. He was there, and I thought, you know what? There's a lot of chatter around him, and if I'm going to be building this dynasty team, I'm going to put him on there. See what happens.
Fair enough.
Oh.
I love it. So remind everybody, Kelly, where they can find you, your work, and all the great things that you're working on, including your brand new show announcement. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I have a new show. Oh, my gosh. Well, you can find me at Kelly in Phoenix. I am doing a lot of things right now, and I am fully into sports, even in my day job now, which is super exciting. You can find me at Club Fantasy. You can find me Women of Fantasy Football, IBT Media. The commish has put out some funds to produce a new podcast for me called Extra Points with Kelly and Phoenix, and it's just supposed to be a short little snippet. And the first one I recorded with Bo McBrayer, and we discussed rookies. So it's only 15 minutes long if you want to go check it out. Extra
Awesome.
Points with Kelly and Phoenix. And then Wednesday, Woodward Sports at Woodward Bets, I give my golf picks. So I'll be having my Masters segment on Wednesday, 4:30 Eastern time at Woodward Bets.
And this weekend, we wear green to celebrate the Masters and the winning
I love it.
of the Jackets. Love to hear it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. That's it. That's what we got this week. Ryan, Kelly, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to fill in and host for Evan. I know I didn't do quite as good a job, but That's all right. Evan will be back next week to
You're still the
hold
boss,
it down
so.
and drive things forward. At the Fantasy 5 is Ryan Weisse, myself at the One Hudsonian, Kelly in Phoenix on Twitter. You can follow us at Club Fantasy FFL, the URL clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to check out No Punt Intended this Wednesday. We're not live, unfortunately. Following up continuing our Stars of Tomorrow series, following up doing running backs this week. We've invited Under the Helmet's Katie Flower on to talk running backs. We pre-recorded on Sunday night. So again, still going to drop same time, 7 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It's just only going to be on YouTube. So if you follow us on Twitter and look forward to the Twitter stream, venture over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're pushing 350 subscribers. And look, 350, I'm giving away a signed Keenan Allen jersey, right, guys? So if you want a shot at winning that jersey and looking like our lovely co-host Joe Zolo, who has a signed Keenan Allen jersey, get in on the action, hit subscribe, let us know that you follow us and are enjoying the work that we're putting out. Be sure to check us out. And as always, adios, folks.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kelly.
Bye.